So I found out that our guest today actually attended the same high school as many of my friends. Having a common thread between our stories has made me even more thrilled to have him and share his story with you all today. Ashton Keys is the co founder and CEO of Athlytic, a company modernizing the athletic world as we know it by creating a one stop shop for athletic influencers to monetize their name, image, and likeness over their career lifecycle. The platform is a seamless marketplace for both brands and athletes to facilitate campaign deals.
After growing up in Detroit and moving to Michigan State University, he finished his studies in experience architecture and worked in UX design, engineering, product management, and growth marketing. During our discussion, he touched on how he isn't a first time founder and how his previous experiences informed his strategy to build Athletic. Ashton has been a fellow at Invest Detroit Ventures and Venture for America, as well as a product manager for Rocket Homes, and is now using his skills to build the future of sports technology. And welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Doing well. I'm doing really well. Can't complain at all.
Well, we're super excited to have you on today. I know we actually briefly met during our first workshop for Startup Boost Detroit,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, pandemic struggles got in the way of that program. But I'm super glad that we get to have you on today and talk about how you and your co-founder Jared are empowering athletes in a world where, historically, as students, they have had a hard time bringing in any money at all, really, including from their own side businesses. So, we like to start off each episode of TFR by walking our listeners back to the very beginning of every founder's story. So, you started your journey in Detroit, right?
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Detroit, actually, on the west side of Detroit. Um, and I think it all kind of starts because my first foray into entrepreneurship started when I was like 15. I went to Cass Tech High School. And I think one unique thing about Cass Tech is that it's very entrepreneurial. Everyone's doing something, whether they're selling cookies, candy, snacks. I did all of it. I sold pop, soda, depending on where you're at, because I'm in a different part of the U.S. now. But and started my own clothing line in high school, and it really kind of just showcased or showed me, how to take my creativity and monetize that and be able to, initially you're just be wanting to buy Jordans and sneakers like every 15-year-old Black kid in the city of Detroit. But then it turned into, a passion in me learning so much about, supply and demand, which is, we didn't have access to snacks, so you can actually bump up pricing. And then also thinking about buying things in bulk and bumping up pricing and making profits off of that. So that was like my first, intro foray into entrepreneurship. And then obviously eventually went to Michigan State, where, I had this mindset of, wanting to be a business owner. But I think Michigan State really cultivated this new world of entrepreneurship, which is startups and technology, which, I didn't have that exposure coming from Detroit. And really me being, super entrepreneurial and willing to learn. It just taught me so much, opened my eyes into how I could take what I was doing with these snacks or clothing and actually implement this into the startup ecosystem that's $1 billion ecosystem. And from that moment, I kind of tailored all my experiences from my freshman year of college all the way into meet my working experiences to put myself in a position to be a startup founder.
I started selling candy in elementary school and then at my middle school in Burton International, which was like at the time, I think maybe 10 minutes or so from Cass,
Hmm.
before they built the new building. I started selling hot dogs and chips and stuff like so. I can definitely relate to you. I used to go to my art teacher like, "Hey, what do you think about this? Well, we need some hot dogs. We need some food here." So she was like, "All right, cool." So I started that. And one thing I love about Cass, I mentioned earlier, like I went to Michigan State, but when I got to Cass, or when I got to Michigan State, I noticed there were so many of my friends from middle school that were at Michigan State. You know, we call it like a small Cass Tech, basically, of the state. So, one of the things I love most about Cass is that I really feel like they provide opportunity and access for the students of Detroit. And I say that because my best friend who went to Cass ended up going to Michigan State. He never had plans of going to college. Like, he just said he was going to graduate and that was it. And I remember the day he told me that there was a recruiter, admissions recruiter from Michigan State that came up there to the school. That was the
Hmm.
only school he applied to. He
Hmm.
got in. So fast forward, I meet him in the business college, and I mean, I'm sure you know, but like the accounting classes, finance, they were no joke. Like you would be out of there. You thought you wanted to major in business? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm telling you, this guy, like he literally he was passing class with A's. He was tutoring people, and now he owns his own logistics company, and he partners with people like or companies like Starbucks, Amazon, Walmart. And I'm always blown away because I always think, what if, right? Like, what if that missions recruiter didn't come there? Would he still be the same person if he did not have that access or opportunity?
Hmm.
So that always gets me. So I wanted to talk to you more just about like I know you I don't know if it was the robotics team, but you participated in robotics there at CAS. So I wanted to talk to you about just STEM opportunity. What did that look like?
Yeah, it's a crazy story because I think that's very similar to me. Like I
Wow.
think when you think about Cass, like I mean, my mom. Okay, I would say that, but like also, my sister went to Clark Atlanta, so she also
Okay.
graduated from Cass. So like, college was a thing in my household. My mom also graduated from college, but it wasn't something like that. I like me, just to be transparent. I didn't like grow up like, especially in high school, like, oh, I can't wait till I get to college.
Right.
That wasn't me. I wasn't a bad student or anything, but it's just not something I thought about on a day to day. But like with Cass, it's like it was never like if, it was just like where. Like we had like our college days and everybody wore like, what school are you going to? So it was just like the expectation that Cass set on you from the time you started in the freshman year to the time you graduated was more around like deciding what school do you like and what school are you going to, which is very interesting because we had a significant amount of the people that I went to school with ended up going to college, or if they didn't, they end up going to community college at least, or going to the military or doing like a naval academy. So like that was something I experienced itself. Like I only applied to a few schools. And I got into Michigan State because we did an on campus, or it was like a same day approval. That's
Yep.
kind of how I
Yep.
got into Michigan State. They're like, oh, if you just go to this college fair, you'll get accepted the same day. So I was like, I mean, I guess like, so I just went. It's another story. I was like tired the night before. I almost didn't finish my application.
Wow.
But I ended up just like, my cousin was like, man, just finish it. So I did that, finished it, got into state. Um, and like that's where I went. Like I never visited the campus. Um, I didn't like, I didn't go on any college tour. Like I really didn't do like let me like really look at
Yeah.
each I didn't even like look at programs or anything. Like I was just like, I knew a lot of people from Cass went to state. They said it was fun. Um, my mom told me I was supposed to be an engineer, so I'm like, that's what I want to major in. Like, and this is the school that I'm going to because that's where I got
Yeah.
accepted. And I went there, and it was like, one of the best decisions I made. Because
Wow.
not only did it open my eyes and so many different things that I just didn't have access to in Detroit, but also like the community at Michigan State that still supports me to this day, in my
Yeah.
career, and what I'm doing you can't get that anywhere. So I do agree, a lot of similarities in terms of just kind of like them setting us up for success. And when we got in those positions and got to college, we took advantage of it to the best of our abilities.
at MSU, you get there and you decide to, I mean, you said your mom wanted you to be an engineer, but I
Oh,
did a little LinkedIn search and saw that you majored in experience architecture and then went on to work for some other companies after college. So,
mm,
for one, I guess, how did you decide that that was going to be your major and what
yeah.
exactly is that? And then what were the main takeaways from you working as an experienced designer or in design engineering after college?
Yeah. That's a great question because it's very interesting. So like when I started at Michigan State, I went to so I guess this is a little backstory, but it all makes sense. So my mom, and you got to think about it, like black parents, you know, either doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like that's kind of what they push their kids into. I'm pretty sure brown parents, like most parents want you to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, because they see money like that. They're like, I'm gonna put you in a field that you're guaranteed to make money. So like my mom like molded me to be an engineer my entire life. So I actually participated in DEPSET, which is the Detroit area pre-college engineering program from the time I was like 11, up until high school. And, so like I was molded to think, when I went to CAS, she made me, we had majors at CAS, it was manufacturing technology. So I was doing like machine drafting. So I was actually like sketching like buildings and like doing like architecture in that capacity. I was like drawing cars and like nuts and bolts. And then robotics, I also did that, which I didn't want to do robotics. Is another story. Like they just put me in a class. I was more of like I wanted to do like art and stuff, but my mom made me do engineering. So I ended up liking it. I actually had a lot of fun and met a lot of cool people in STEM. So like my journey to STEM was like, I didn't, I was pushed into it and ended up loving it, and it helped me so much in my career. But back to state, so I was taking like all of these like manufacturing engineering classes, and I was like, I did a robotics class, and we were like starting to like basically it was like a lot of stuff. It's like, man, like I don't want to make engines. Like I don't want to like because it's like mechanical engineering too. Like I don't want to make engines. It's just not something that I'm like excited about, and it was like hard because it's like I was torn into trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Like I thought I wanted to be an industrial designer, which I thought I wanted to work at like Nike or something to design sneakers. And one of the classes, if you went to Michigan State, I think it's like a writing class that we had, like a WRA, one of the first classes, and it was around like a lot of the classes, like a lot of the point of the class was to write about things that you were interested in. And we had to do a project on like what our interests were, and we wrote a paper. I wrote a paper on like design, like graphic design and design. I had started my own clothing line in high school. I still was doing it, and I was writing about all the things that I was interested in, especially like graphically and like how I taught myself how to do graphic design, how I taught myself how to build my own website. And he was like, man, like I don't think my teacher pulled me to the side one day, and he told me like I don't think manufacturing like or engineering, especially mechanical, is like the major for you. And like I had already felt that, but I was doing what my family told me I should do. And he was like, you should look into this major. It's this newer major called experience architecture. It's like a combination of graphic design, but also has more of like some engineering practices because they take computer science and other things like that. And I was like, experience architecture, like what? He's like, man, he's like, just meet with the dean of the program. Like once you talk to him, you'll love it. So I ended up scheduling a meeting. I met with the guy, and we just talked for like an hour and a half. And he was just like trying to sell the program to me because it was super new, like it was new. And he was just like, man, this was the program for the future of the working world. Like when you think about like employees, like now you have to be able to think really strategically. You have to have design thinking. Like it's not narrow in terms of the skill sets that you need to be impactful in the world. It's like what type of career you can work at Facebook, Twitter, Google. I'm like, man, like I would love to work at like one of those companies. So like I changed my major like right after that, without really knowing too much, in terms of like what it would be like. But I just knew like I would rather go on that journey versus the engineering journey that I was going on. And I didn't tell my parents for like 2 semesters for sure. Uh, and I remember when I told them, they were not happy at all. And I kind of just had to like just walk on faith and trust that I was making that decision, um, and really experience architecture. I guess the what it is really is when you think about digital experience is architect. So if you think about like anything that we consume, whether it's an application, a website, a car, when you think about an infotainment system, it's a digital experience that someone is creating for that. So what experience architecture, the major really encompasses teaching you how to create digital experiences for users, whether it's something like a technical experience, an interface for a website as or designing a website, an app, designing an actual product. So like a classes that we took was like which is very unique. It was very basic on what you want to actually do in your career. So we took like user research, we took interactive web design, we took computer science classes, everything that you would think that you would need to be successful in a digital product user experience role. So like it helped me a lot because when I started to in the real world, I was super prepared because I already did research. So when we were researching, for some of the projects I was working on, I already did that. When we were doing like when I was talking to engineers, I already took computer science classes. When I was designing mock-ups or prototypes, I already did that. We had a prototyping class. So it was very much a new innovative way to teach, to prepare people to be prepared for this new working world, especially from like a technology standpoint, especially in startups.
First of all, I kind of wish I majored in that now because it sounds really cool. And it sounds like it also combines things that I really like to do personally. So that sounds really interesting. And also, I'm sure, yeah, like you said, that it was super helpful probably when you were starting up Athletic to already be in a mindset of, the engineering mindset where you have to keep iterating on whatever you're building and you have to keep
Mm,
asking for feedback. It's like something that we learn in all of our classes. I did computer science in undergrad, so it was like the same thing. Like when you're building an application, you have to think about things in a logical way, but then you have to be flexible and willing to change things to make them more efficient based on the feedback you receive.
yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, in terms of the jobs that you took afterwards, like what were some of the lessons that you took away from those that you took with you to startup life?
I mean, I think um, every job really prepared me to be in the position I am today. And I think like I was very strategic around that. So like I was one of the unique people I think in the founder world where it's like, all right, I'm gonna create every experience to prepare me to be a founder. So like I never like whether it was when I started college, I majored in experience architecture, I minored in entrepreneurship and in innovation. I took fellowships um, through Invested Trade Ventures, as well as I took a fellowship through Venture for America. So it's like, let me get as many experiences, connections as I can to help me be successful in the role. So right after I graduated, well, when I was in college, this is another crazy story. I was at like a startup fair for my company. It was another clothing company that I was still running. And one of the guys from Invested Trade Ventures was like literally standing next to me at the startup fair. And we were talking, we were just chatting up. Like I was telling him what I was doing. Like, I was just talking about my stuff, meeting and greeting. Cause Michigan State would always like put me in front of different people just to showcase what I was doing. And he was like, hey, like, I know you're doing your own thing, but like, we have this internship program through IDV. And he was like, you should do it. And like at that time, I was like, man, I want to be like, I'm like, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. Like I want to focus on my company. And he was like, no, he was just like, no, like, just please, like, just consider it. You can use the money he like sold me on, like, you can use the money to focus on your own company. So I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I decided to do it after he, like, sold me hard. Cause it was the first time IDV was doing this program called Hacker Fellows. So I was the first class of the internship for Hacker Fellows, which is a fellowship program or through Invest in Trade Ventures. I worked at a company called RideHop as a user experience designer there. So it was like my first foray into startups. So it was 3 people. I was literally doing everything from customer support to website design to shipping boxes. I was doing everything. And it just taught me a lot about like being scrappy and like having to like, which that's me now. Like I'm literally doing everything, you know? So it was cool to really get that first experience in like the startup world, the career world, also see CEOs as normal people. And then, I ended up doing the full program because they had an internship and then they had a regular fellowship post graduation at Hacker Fellow. So I actually did it post grad, where I ended up working at a company called Lighthouse. I mean, not Lighthouse. I'm sorry, Op Solutions, where I was a augmented reality system design engineer. Super long title, but that was a very unique experience because I had did a little bit of AR work, but like not like implement it for like actual clients. And that taught me a lot in terms of like process because they were very process oriented because the way they worked is like it was more like they kind of worked like it was like a software as a service type of thing, but it was a lot of customizing. So like you have clients like HP, Ford, Nissan, Tesla, Rivian. They would use augmented reality. This is a very unique use case for AR, but they're using AR for manufacturing. So like the problem that manufacturers had is like when you hire someone to work on the line and build the car, like you have to teach them, and it was very much paper based. So instead of like you having to teach or onboard something, you would actually just present them the step-by-step guidance of what they needed to do in augmented reality. So you can like pull someone off the street and then they'll like, okay, you need to pick this screw, put this here, pick this, put this here. And then we would use like machine vision to like actually check off that that's the correct thing that they did. So it was like very cool, super technical, but it's like, to think about like, oh, I could pull anyone off the street and I can have them build a car through augmented reality. It was really, really interesting. And I did a lot of cool work there. I pushed out like, 45 projects that I designed. It was stressful to say the least, because I had to learn very quickly and it's a startup. So it's not like an onboarding process. So like, it was hard, but I learned a lot about process. After that, one of the things I didn't like is like you just build like with stuff like that, it's like you kind of build an MVP and then you hand it off to the team. And I wanted to like do stuff. For me, I was like an entrepreneur. So I'm like, man, I want to like see stuff through. Like I want to actually build projects from start to finish. I want to iterate. I want to update. I want to go from MVP to 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. And I found out that I was a product manager. And I was like, trying to apply for product management roles. And I was like, it was hard to get into product. Like product is not a undergrad. I thought if it was any undergrad major to get you into product, I thought mine was the right way, but it was hard. Like I wasn't getting any love from like Facebook or any place like that. So then another thing, like I always got recruited. So then I met a fellow from Venture for America and they're like, man, like you did so much in college. You were like super entrepreneurial. You should join VFA. And I'm like, look, I want to be a product manager. Like I already did a fellowship. Like I feel like I'm getting the experience. And they're like, well, VFA fellows get jobs as product managers. And I was like, sign me up, So I went in with a narrow focus because VFA is a 2-year fellowship. It's kind of like an apprenticeship program where you work at a company for 2 years. You gain all the experience and knowledge that you need to get, and then you start your own company. So I went in, I was like, the only role I want to get is product. Like if it's anything else, don't talk to me. So like I applied, got in obviously, and went through the match process and I got a lot of interviews. I actually turned out a job that I was making more money from. I don't even know if I could talk. I don't want to throw the company on the bus, but I turned out a job actually from where a company offered me more money because it was like a UX job. And I was like, I only want to do product. So like I turned it down. I was in Cleveland, Ohio. It was very stressful because I didn't have, like I had at that point, because the way VFA works, they had a training camp. So like I didn't have a job at the time, so I was going through the training camp, and I had this job offer that was offering me good pay, but like I knew like I wanted to be product because I felt like that would prepare me the best to be a CEO. Like product is that.
Yeah.
So ended up doing that, and worked at Rocket Mortgage. Went and went one of their new products that they launched called Rocket HQ, which was kind of the catalyst because of what they are right now. If you actually look at their website,
Yeah.
which the vision that they're trying to get to now was like a unified consumer experience across Rockets. So they have like tabs where it's like you got Rocket Auto, Rocket Mortgage, Rocket Homes. So I did a lot of work on a lot of different of those companies. So I started at Rocket HQ, did some work at Rocket Mortgage, then I went over to Rocket Homes. So I literally worked at all of the different Rockets and helped kind of build what they have today on the product
Yeah.
side, which is one of the
That's
first people there to do that.
You actually met your co-founder through
Mm,
VFA, right?
yeah. Mm,
That's amazing because from what I'm hearing, it's like you stuck with faith. Can you talk more about that? Because I think as founders, when you have a dream and you want to build it, it's not making money. It takes a while to make money, right? And so
mm.
sometimes you'll have family, I'm sure, like, you got a degree. What are you doing? You need to be working. What is this? Doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense, you know? So I wanted to talk to you more about like just how you were able to have like this steadfast type of like scope? Is it
Mhm.
faith? Was it a gut feeling? Like what was that encouraged you to continuously follow this?
Yeah, I mean, I think to just be transparent and honest, I think it was the only thing I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
So like throughout the whole journey and process, like even when I was working at Op Solutions, like I would read TechCrunch every day, you know, and like I would read TechCrunch, Fast Company. Like I don't even read that as much now. I guess because I'm like focused and I'm in a company, so like I don't care what other people are doing. But like when I was like back then, I would read it. Like my morning routine when I got to work was like read all the things about like I knew every startup, what every startup was doing. And it was like that's what kept me motivated because like that's where I wanted to be. Like I had like a list of like all the program, like every program that I probably got into, like I already documented it before I even applied, like 2 years before. And like, you know, I used to like look at Techstars companies and be like, oh my God, like man, Techstars, like you know, what if I can get into that program? That would be crazy. And like I'm here now, you know, and I think it was stuff like that where it's like I really, you know, would look up to some of these people that were in programs at places like this. What always keep me focused, but it was like that's what my passion was. Like my passion was to be a founder. You know, since I was 15, that was the only thing I ever wanted to be. And like when I went to college, it wasn't like I went to college to be like uh I mean I was supposed to be an engineer, but even when I like found my passion, it was like everything in college. Like I was a part of entrepreneurship, I was a part of the hatch, I was a part of, you know, I minored in entrepreneurship. So even then it was like that was what I wanted to do. My family had already, you know, realized that and really supported me, you know, once I, you know, reached a certain point and always asked me, you know, even when I was starting to work, like, you know, don't ever give up on your dream. You know, my mom would tell me that all the time. I remember my first year, she felt like I was getting kind of comfortable. And she was like, you know, don't give up. I know what you wanted to do. And like, you should always keep that. And I think even it was harder during that time before VFA, but it helped out a lot.
How are you scheduling your days? Are days every day just crazy? Um, how is that now with you doing everything?
That's something that people don't talk about. Like, and I think that was one
Yeah.
thing that my work world did not prepare me for, which is to be a leader or a CEO.
Come
Because
on.
I was always a leader by example, but now I have to lead by direction, which is very different, and it's something I'm still growing into. It's a day to day, you know, challenge that I always go work at. So for me, it's a lot of, you know, balancing my time, which is giving direction, you know, giving tasks to other people. So I use Notion and things of that nature where I have to set tasks and boards for other people. And then I also have to, you know, make sure I'm on top of what I need to do. And it's challenging, you know. So every day is different for me. I think for me, usually what like today, you know, I always start my day off with emails, you know, and check my email, make sure everything is set up for that. And then I go from there to, like, today was different because it's Friday, so I had to send out the company update. So I send out my company update, um, investor update, because we're, starting to get closer to fundraising. So we're doing it weekly versus monthly. So since wrote that, sent that out, got feedback. Still in Techstars currently. So I had a Techstars call that I had to hop on to a little bit. And then, in between that, I communicated with the employees to get them up to date on what we need for some of the campaigns that we have going on. One with MasterCard and another with a local shop in Lansing. So sent them a message to make sure they're up to date. Last night, like, I met with an employee. We had a one-on-one, and then also had to send another employee an update on what they needed. So it's like it's a lot of just, man, back and forth communication. Like, I try to communicate as much as I can as possible. I kind of work on I'm a technical person, so I work on the way we work as usual to how you work in like a engineering, process where we work on sprints. We have stand-ups, we have retros and things of that nature. Just the hard part is like when we're moving so much. I travel. I was just in the Super Bowl. It's like that kind of messes everything up, because now it's like you have to push things around, move things around. If you're doing some business stuff and you have to move a meeting, it is harder in the startup because everything is not as, like, in the corporate world, like everybody was there Monday through Friday. And that's just not the case, for me, because it's just a lot of moving parts. But I try my best to stay up to date. And if I don't, I try to meet with people as much as I can and keep people updated.
So I saw that Athlytic wasn't actually your first venture, and you mentioned this briefly earlier, but it was actually your second, technically. And
Yeah.
I always love hearing how people's second time founder stories are a little bit different from their very first go at startup life, because the first go is kind of chaotic. I'm in it right now, so I know. What would you say is the problem that you're solving with your co-founder this time, and like how is this journey different from, again, that first go?
I think it's different because, like, my first one was like a whole different thing. Like, it was product in a sense, like clothing. But I mean, it's still some things that, I learned from that. Like, I think one of them was like I was working with manufacturers all across, like in Pakistan, China, and like one of the things that I had to like learn about that is like making sure like you have a lot of attention to detail in contracting, and like you call out everything, because like if something like messes up, like you want to be able to call that out in the paperwork so that you can, get your money back, or it's proof that you said it before. So I think like that's one thing that like carried over in terms of contracting, because we contract a lot of things, whether it's development. Sometimes we might contract like just small design work. But I'm like always have attention to detail. Like, also, like, we're in a creator economy. Like, no matter if people look at athletes as creators or not, we are. And like it's a lot of contracting that happens within it. Like, it's so much contracting. So like I call out a lot of things. I have a lot of attention to detail in terms of like how I just, you do paperwork, because that's something I learned from that process, from getting effed over a couple times, working with overseas manufacturer, because they look at Americans and they get over on us sometimes. Unfortunately, but I learned my lesson. Other than that, I think it's just like work ethic. One of the big things that I learned from like my first is that I had a lot of media. Like, I had a lot of press from the first venture. And this is another interesting story, but how I learned how to, I read a book around like how a guy, this is like, a guy started like a grills company, like a gold grills company. And he like made a ton of money and like was extremely successful because he had like got a lot of press about it. And he like wrote a book. It was like a little small book. And like I still use that to this day. Like, in terms of like we're extremely successful in PR and press and get a lot of media organic. We don't really pay for like We paid a PR agency, and honestly, I got more press myself than the PR agency that we paid. Like I was so mad about that. Like that was that's a lesson. Do not pay for PR. You can do it yourself. Trust me, I can teach you. But I learned that way back in college. You know, like I had like State News, Lansing State Journal, Future Free Press. I had so many iOS magazine. Like I had a lot of press because I just knew it's more about looking at things from the writer's perspective and like what their values are versus the founder's perspective, which is I'm cool, write about me because I'm cool. Um, and I think that it helps me a ton. It's helped me a lot. You know, and like we've been crushing it in terms of like PR, press, features. I mean, like Forbes, Business Insider, ESPN Radio. Because of them, we can. I mean, I can go on a list. We had like over like at this point 20 plus uh, articles mentioned, and we didn't really pay a lot for it.
I wanted to get into Athletic, and from what I read, I looked at it as like it's essentially a marketplace that's online that kind of like a social media platform that really bridges the gap between the brands and the athletes. But I wanted to get it straight from the source. Can you kind of give us like a elevator pitch just so everyone can understand exactly what it is before we dive into it?
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit the gist of it, which is just this past year, July 1st, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
A law change that allow student athletes to be able to monetize their name, their brand, their likeness. But the way it happened was kind of interesting because it wasn't like, hey, starting in 2020, next year we're gonna change this law and everyone will be prepped and ready to do this. No, it went down to the last hour. I know because I was
Wow.
there and I was like stressed about it. I'm like, what's going to happen? Is it going to happen? Because how it really went into effect is the NCAA had a case that went to the Supreme Court. They ended up losing that case, and after that, they decided to not pursue, or really, they made a blanket waiver to allow student athletes to monetize their name. But this happened literally; they didn't make that blanket waiver until like the week of July 1st. So because of that, no one really knew what was happening. Everyone kind of was like kind of preparing, but they didn't know because there was just so much uncertainty. So what that created is lack of structure, infrastructure into how these transactions happen, because the NCAA was supposed to create a third party administrator. They did not do that. They decided to not pursue that. So everybody is out in the Wild West trying to figure this out themselves. And the even worse problem of it is these are young people. These are not adults. Like I wouldn't even know how to figure it out myself. Think about when people ask you like, hey, can you do some consulting work? Like, how do you price yourself? Like, you're like, I don't know how much I'm worth. You just kind of shooting in the dark. So imagine cutting your age to 18, 19 and trying to figure out how much you're worth to do some of these things when you didn't even think this would ever happen. So we just make it simple. We simplify and seamlessly helps those connections happen. So we help businesses that want to play in the space. They want to work with athletes to have them promote their businesses. They can utilize our platform to connect with those athletes, but also understand that when they do it, they're going to do it in a clear, compliant way, so that what they're doing is not illegal through their state, the college, or NCAA. And then on the athlete side, is also putting them in a position to be available so that businesses can find them so that they can monetize their name, but also educate them on how much they could potentially be worth, and branding education, as well as some of the things that we want to do with MasterCard, which is financial education.
I think one of the biggest things for me that I love the most about your company is that it puts the control back into the athlete's hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're a phenomenal athlete, sometimes you may not get the job after, you've retired, right, on ESPN, but this is a really great opportunity to learn and understand the business side of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk to you about that education part, and you mentioned it already, just providing financial literacy, working with MasterCard. But could you share more about what that process looks like? on how you all are really educating these athletes to protect themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first part is just like, I think the bare minimum bones, which no athletes didn't have, which they still ask about this all the time, is around worth. Like, what is your worth? And also learning about like your value and like what brands look for. So like some of the things we provide them is more like their digital presence. So like what is your followers? Who follows you? Like what are their interests? What's your engagement rate? And like this is like the back end on like how brands are coming up with their value. So also giving you that knowledge to say, how can I improve my work? How can I improve my followers? Oh, I need to be more engaged, and maybe I should change the way my captions. Maybe I should make my captions more inviting. Maybe I should ask questions with how I communicate so that I can engage my community a little more. Also, it's around like, okay, who follows me? What are their interests? Maybe I should post content more tailored towards what my followers are interested in. So really just providing them that oversight and giving them the ownership to make that decision. And like that's where we are now. Like the future though is we really want to go into it in depth to make step by step guidance on like how they can do that. So since we have access to that data, it's like, okay, you should post more on Wednesday because that's when your followers are most active, or you should really think about posting more about, food because that's what your, audience is interested in. So helping them build their presence so that they can be successful. And then on the financial side is, I mean, one of the things we just did actually in LA, which is during the Super Bowl, was brought in, three athletes that were successful at branding themselves to talk to other students at USC and UCLA about what they did. So that's more in person type of thing where you have people that are killing it, they're on TikTok, and this is you have their time to ask them like, what did they do? How can I improve myself? Or what are some strategies that I could do? But we also brought brands there and said like, we don't have a ton of athletes. Like, you want to grow your presence here? It's 50 athletes here. Like, connect. Like, I connected with three of them for endorsement opportunities. So we literally brought brands to work with them on site to put them in that position and also teach them. That's a networking thing. You teach them how to put themselves out there, teach them how to sell themselves
Yeah.
so that they can put themselves in position. Because a lot of times you
Right.
may not have the best digital presence, but a brand will fall in love with your personality to represent them. And sometimes you don't really see that through social interactions.
Another shift we're also seeing is with the presence of high profile athletes now committing to HBCUs.
Mm.
So I was just interested in this. I don't know if we're going to include this in the podcast, but I wanted to just get your thoughts on that. Like, how do you think that's shifting the culture, and do you think that Athletic has some type of future plans with like aligning that more and supporting those HBCU players?
Yeah. Oh, we are already doing it. You're already doing it.
Okay,
We just put out a
that's sweet.
campaign this past week with Spikeball, where they worked with Florida A&M athletes. They plan to work with more athletes. We've been communicating with MasterCard to conclude their support of HBCUs. I mean, I think everything that we talk about, no matter what brand, HBCU athletics is something that we discuss. And I think what makes us unique in the space, just as an
Yeah,
underrepresented Black founded company where, employ and
yeah,
connect with a ton of, HBCU graduates. So like for me, I communicate or talk to HBCU graduates all the time. I have people on my team that graduate from HBCU. So we are very, very in depth and in touch with the culture, understanding what they need.
yeah.
And like that's something I literally was talking about. Like we were talking about a campaign yesterday with one of my employees that's at North Carolina A&T. And I was like, okay, like we want to make sure this like resonates to HBCU alumni because it's a different
Yeah.
culture. So like let's make sure like this resonates and this is not just like, oh, let's do an HBCU campaign, but like what do people at HBCUs actually want to see? Like how
Right.
can we create that unique experience so that it is authentic? And like that's the thing that we pride ourselves
Yeah.
on is creating authentic partnerships versus, this big brand wants to commit a scholarship to the HBCU to say they, work with the
Yeah.
Black community. So that's something that we're super passionate about.
Exactly, exactly. And I think in order for the real impact to happen, it really just has to happen across sectors, right?
Mm.
Because we're seeing two shifts, like with Deion Sanders, becoming the coach at is it Jackson? Jacksonville.
Jackson State.
Okay, Jackson State. Okay. So yeah, so we're seeing that shift. So I'm excited. I got like goosebumps when you were talking about it, because I'm like, man, this is just so dope. So I mean, I'm just appreciative of you really supporting us and driving our culture forward, especially leveraging tech. Because I think, especially within our communities, we want to help, and sometimes we don't know how, and we can be intimidated by that tech part of it, but that's really a part of the future and where we, should lean into versus leaning outward.
Honestly, you're a prime example when it comes to being resourceful. I mean, you were just talking about how you were at these college campuses, and even while you were there, you were just in person, basically being your platform. You were just connecting people in person to these opportunities so that brands who wanted more exposure could take advantage of students who also could get exposure and actually be compensated, hopefully. And when I went back and took a look at what you've done during your process of building Athletic, it was really impressive to see how many programs, whether those were accelerators, fellowships, or communities, you've taken advantage of. And you said you were marking those down in like a document years before you even went into the programs. Walk us through your experiences with those, and if you could share sort of like the timeline of when you went through those programs and what each of them taught you, if you actually recommend all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I love all my programs, and I reason I say that, and it's funny because like I was actually kind of sad this week because we're getting to the end of Tech Stars. And, like the one thing that I realized is like the thing that when you go through these programs is you build community and you be around someone for a lot of time, like a long period of time for a short period of time, and then you leave, you never talk to them. And that's kind of hard when you think about it. Like you might talk to them, like update, like, hey, bro, how you doing? Like, oh, they send an update, like that's dope. But it's just like you kind of lose that. Like literally, I was like in LA living with people for like a month straight. So I would see them for 24 hours, and then like I never talked to these people again. So it's interesting to go in and out of communities like that. But I would say, top programs like obviously VFA. If you're thinking about being an entrepreneur but you're not there yet, I would say joining VFA to give you some time to figure out what you want to do and connect with the community. I would say like obviously Techstars is Techstars. So like if you want to be in a position to fundraise, like Techstars, that's what it's for. It's to really help you prepare to be in the right position to pitch. We pitch so much. I'm tired of pitching, man, but we pitch every week. We pitch, man. I thought I pitched a lot. And it's different because it's like I used to pitch a lot for pitch conversations, but the stakes were low. But Techstars, it's like for some reason it's like they make it like pressure. I don't know why. It's like a high profile pitch. Like you can't fuck up. And excuse my language, but it's like I've never been nervous pitching, but Techstars like maybe like had to like make me get out of my comfort zone pitching, which was different, but also prepped me to be able to pitch in like those type of environments that I would usually be like on my Zoom, in my house with like basketball shorts on, So it's like I was comfortable, but Techstars like no, it's like you have to really be ready for that. Um, I would say other than that, like Lighthouse Labs was cool in terms of like it's a race from Virginia, and I think one of the things I loved about them is like they really utilize all their relationships they can to put you in a position to be successful. Like they made like 50 intros. Like they're going to use their network. It's on to you to make the act, but if you make the act, they'll do it. And I love that about them. And then Visible Hands, what I love about them is they're people driven. So they care about you as a person. And I think that's one of the differences between, like, I mean, Techstars care about us as a person, but I think it's like, I mean, it's Techstars too, so it's a big ecosystem, and it's like it's a route, in terms of like you come in, you come out, it's just it's 12 founders in, 12 founders out, so it's like you kind of a part of that machine that's driving, but Visible Hands, which is Black specific, underrepresented specific, they really and it was for some people they were pre-idea, so they really worried about cultivating the person, and you really had that relationship. But so yeah, I love them. I love all my community, my programs. Some other ones to note that helped me out prior as future founders out in Chicago. And that's just more about like they don't focus on like the company, but they focus more on like you as a person in terms of making you successful in what I struggle with, like how to like hire and like be a boss, how to have one-on-ones, like how to have, stand-ups and other things like that. So
Monica Wheat was our very first guest on this podcast, like ever, and she was talking about Equitech and like how it's just about to launch, and like you were
mhm.
part. This was the first batch, right? That
Yep.
you're finishing. Yeah, so it's really cool to hear like someone from the first batch coming through our podcast, also going through the program and really having an awesome opportunity to build this really supportive community around them. So
Yeah, they've been. I will shout out to Equitech and Upchurch. Um, that's one thing like I would say about like staying in like a smaller community versus going to like a San Fran, LA. I
Yeah.
love LA. I'm not gonna lie, I do love LA, but um, it's like you have support like Baltimore and like Upsurge and Techstars. Like they want you to be successful, and you feel that like you have champions behind them. And I feel like I was in LA. I lived in LA for a minute. It's not like that. It's like you are part of the next generation, and like this was what you need to do to raise. If you don't raise, next on to the next hot thing. And I think it's not like that here, where regardless of what happened, we'll have people behind us that support us.
We were talking about athletes and how pretty much their worth is contingent upon their performance, which
Mm,
that takes a toll, I think, in everyday life when, if you're underperforming and that's like your main purpose, right?
mm,
You don't really have identity outside of that. It could take a toll on you. And so I wanted to talk to you just about mental health. And I don't know if you're familiar with the I Am Athlete podcast, like
mm-hmm.
obsessed, love it before, when they started it. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is amazing. And I think it was part of the social worker in me. I didn't know that I would ever be in social work and be able to combine business with that. But I think it was the social worker in me that just absolutely loved having like just very informal, deep, real conversations about how tough it is. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk to you about that, and if you guys provide those type of resources for athletes on the app.
No, I think that's a great call out. And actually, I'm meeting with someone like right after this, who
Oh,
that's
sweet.
their business focus. And one of the things, like as I laid this on my roadmap, is like trying to figure out if we could develop a strategic partnership with someone like a Headspace or a Calm or something of that nature. Because I think one of the biggest examples of that is how, I don't know if you know about this, but you could look it up. Um, it's kind of different story. So like I talk about this a lot with my team, which is fans are harsh, and like the thing that NIL adds, which is name, image, and likeness, this new space, is this adds another layer to that, because sometimes people attach what partnerships you're doing as like a negative to your performance. So a perfect example of this is Oklahoma. They had a quarterback named Spencer Rattler, who, he was the starting quarterback of Oklahoma, is a top team in the country. And, he took advantage of it. He had a lot of deals. He had a lot of opportunities. He had a great season, his last two seasons. This season didn't go as well. He didn't play that good. And people were trying to like say like, oh, the brands didn't get a return on their investment, and like, oh, the brands shouldn't sponsor him. He ended up getting benched. And it was just like a lot of like, chatter around like, oh, you put your money, you did the sponsorship with this athlete, now he's not playing well. Like and it's like added pressure, because now you're not just a representation of yourself, your family, you're a representation of the company. And the companies even came out and said like, well, we still got like our ROI, but like that was a lot of chatter. And that made me think a lot about this from that perspective, and like how we could support them from there, because that's important. I know another player that people can look at is like Baker Mayfield, who does a ton of commercials with Progressive, who's in the NFL. But every single time when he has a bad game, they're like, "Oh, he needs to stop doing commercials." Like, "Oh, it's because he did that Progressive." Like he recorded that commercial like over the summertime. Like I know they're not recording during the season, but like people because they see you making money and doing these things, it's like a natural reaction, like, oh, that's why he's not performing. But it just adds more stress to them.
Right.
So that is something that people should consider and talk about. And, for us, it's like we would love, like, the thing about us is like, I'm not, I would be lying if I said like I'm, psychiatrist or a therapist or someone of that nature. So it's like, how can we connect with the right people so that we can provide those resources? And that's what we're doing, is connecting with the people in the industry, with athletes, and hopefully develop a strategic partnership with a platform that's literally dedicated to that, so you can give our athletes access to those type of resources. Because
Oh,
I
absolutely.
understand the stakes are high, because I know people are going through it. I see it all the time.
I
Yeah.
think it'll be a beautiful partnership, and it'll really, really make a difference because one of the biggest things that I just love when I was reading about, your company is that it just really takes pride in making an impact. So it's not just about
Mhm.
sports. And right now an athlete may be thinking, yeah, this is just sports right now. I'm just trying to get my brand deals, but they're really learning about so much about the business. And so I think that you all are really preparing them outside of their
Mhm.
colleges for the real world and what that looks like for them. But most of all, empowering them within this creative ecosystem to know that you really can create. If it's not there already, you can create it to be what you want to be and find fulfillment in that, and not just
Mhm.
in your ability to be a high performer.
Yeah. And I mean, impact is like why we do what we do. And I say this all the time. It's like, someone asks me like what keeps me going, because it's a lot of ups and downs, starting a company.
Yeah,
But I think like going out to LA and like talking to the UCLA, USC athletes, and like hearing their stories, and like how they're like, they really want to do it. Like they really want to participate in it, but they just don't know what they're doing. And they're seeing their other teammates doing it, and it's kind of taking a toll on them. And it's like, for me to be able to help those athletes, to be able to make them feel confident, and be able to start to make money for themselves, I think is the biggest thing that makes me happy. Like, even for the businesses, like we did a campaign in Ann Arbor, unfortunately, but I was there, and I saw like the community, like how they
yeah,
came and like embraced the athlete, and like he was hugging babies. It was like little kids, like they came with the football. They came with their football to play catch with them,
so
and
sweet.
the brand, like the store owner, was like so happy. It was like, and that was like a life changing moment for everybody. Like the kid would never forget the time they played catch with their favorite athlete. The athlete would never forget the time how the community embraced them. And then the thing that stood out the most was like right after he left, he was like, "Hey, can I take?" Because it was a chocolate shop. He was like, "I want to take some chocolate to my mom." So he took a
Mm,
whole free chocolate, and he's like, that was the thing that made stood out to me, is that like this is what he's doing it for. Like he's able to make money for himself. He's able to support his family.
right.
He's able to really, change his life, but also the people that mean the most to him, which is his family and his mom. And I was like, that was the type of things that I want to create at scale for people that look like me, across the country, and business owners too, because it was successful for everybody.
I'm gonna take it all the way back to the beginning. So if you had little Ashton from way back sitting in front of you right now, working on two companies and having countless experience throughout your, education, career, being a part of these programs, what would you say to him right now? What advice would you give him so that he is prepared?
I would say be patient, because I think I was always impatient. Like I was always like, man, when will my moment come? I would just say be patient, live in a moment, enjoy every moment, enjoy every person that you meet, every perspective that you get. Uh, be appreciative of that. And then I think the biggest thing is like, trust your gut. And if you feel something, do it. Whether it's, if it's a relationship that you feel something about, like don't wait too long. Just trust your gut for everything, because usually 9 times out of 10, I was always right with my gut, but I always just didn't react in decision making. So I think that's my feedback to myself.
This was really, really good. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming on. Like this really made my day. I think for me it was huge. One, just having a connection of going to the same school with you,
Mm,
being proud of you, seeing a young black male as well in this space, and I love it because I have younger nephews and younger cousins, right? And I'm always like, hey, what are you thinking about? And just always really striving to keep their world open. So, they don't have to stick to just one thing. It can, I think culturally, we always are looking at things as this is what I'm going to do versus and. So you can do and, not or. You can have
yeah,
both or try different things. So I think you really embody that.
yeah.
I love what you're doing. We really support you in anything that we can do. I know we're growing, so we're not at 1 million followers or anything yet, or we don't know 1 million people, but we are definitely here to just try and help and support you any way we can.
No, appreciate that. I think I appreciate every platform, that I get. And you never know where what a connection can take you. I mean, like I said, I met Monica from the one session we had, and like look where I'm at now. So I think everybody, you never know who can help, who can connect you, and I appreciate any opportunity to speak. And you never know who will reach. Like you never know what
Yeah.
person might see this, and it might turn their light bulb. And like you said, I think being like an inspiration for others, especially younger people, that you could be yourself. I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's like I myself, I know
Yeah.
where I come from. I'm proud of where I come from, but also can reach my goals. And you should see me in the office. Like I wore like a state jersey yesterday. Like I come to the office with the drip. No, for real. I wear like
Ah,
I myself. I myself around, and I appreciate that I'm able to reach my goals and still be myself. Because you have something they don't have, and I think that's what you have to understand. It's like a perspective. No one can understand the culture, especially me. I'm like a sports fanatic, so like I know the sports, I know culture, I know tech. Like it's
yeah.
only one person that has that unique experience, and that's me. So